2 years ago, Bola Tinubu rode into office on the promise of renewed hope. And now, at the halfway mark of his first term, his government insists it has delivered, pointing to a flurry of reforms, foreign investment, and infrastructure projects. A government scorecard released this week boasts over 900,000 loan beneficiaries, $10 billion in foreign exchange backlog cleared, and over 400,000 road projects under construction. There's also the rollout of the long-awaited student loan scheme, a new mining roadmap yielding folds of revenue, CNG gas stations, and, after an initial hurdle, tax reforms aimed at sweeping fiscal reforms are undergoing legislative action. Tinubu's blueprint, dubbed the Renewed Hope Agenda, outlined 8 pillars, from economic reform and infrastructure to food security and social inclusion. His supporters say the groundwork is being laid. Critics argue the delivery is falling short.
President Bola Tinubu has failed woefully to rule well, to provide food for Nigerians, to give them succor in these hard times.
It's not all or nothing. Whether in academics, in our daily experiences, it is not either that you win all or you lose all. To measure progress is to look at where you were and compare to where you are.
In a bid to strengthen local industry and reduce dependence on imports, the federal government approved the new policy, the Renewed Hope Nigeria First policy.
It aims at making government to invest in our people and our industries by changing how government spends money, how we procure, and how also we build our economy.
And in a sign that the controversial fuel subsidy removal and one of the boldest reforms is starting to pay off, state governors say they are now receiving higher monthly allocations.
Both the federal government and the states, instead of sharing somewhere around 750 billion, today they are sharing sometimes 3 times that because of that. So there is no state in the federation, Nasarawa being a good example, that is receiving less than twice what we used to receive before the removal of subsidy.
But analysts argue the impact hasn't trickled down to the public, with economists warning that inflation and a weaker naira has stripped much of the real value from those increased allocations. And while the government boasts of clearing backlogs, it continues to borrow with a new request to fund infrastructure liabilities. It's a record that looks impressive on paper for just 24 months. But on the streets, in markets, and homes across the country, the reality is far more complicated, and for some, perhaps even more painful. In its Nigeria Development Update report, global financial body World Bank says over 129 million Nigerians are currently trapped in poverty. The figure, it says, represents a sharp rise from 40.1% in 2018 to 56% in 2024. Food inflation also remains a significant concern. The International Monetary Fund acknowledges Nigeria's bold economic reforms, including the scrap of fuel subsidies and exchange rate liberalization. It says these changes are necessary, but once they have yet to deliver inclusive growth. Latest figures show that only 5.6 million households, just about 37% of the target, have so far received payments under the government's flagship social investment program. The initiative, launched 2 years ago, aims to distribute 75,000 naira each to 15 million vulnerable households over 3 months.
Initially, when we started, that time, no criteria was among the criteria to be used for the beneficiaries, meaning only one criteria was used. As long as you are registered in the National Social Register, you are a beneficiary. But later on, when the program was suspended, precisely in January 2024, additional criterion was added to it. That is to say, the panel came up with a view for us to be transparent and put integrity to the system. NIN should be part of the criteria. And a number of those people in the National Social Register have no NIN. So that is what brings about the delay.
Okay.
So also is correct. It's at a slow rate because the beneficiaries have no need.
With over 100 million internet users and a rapidly growing online youth population, Nigeria is one of Africa's most digitally active countries. And nowhere is the frustration more visible than online. On social media, anger over economic hardship drives daily debate.
To understand, we see almost everything, in the Presidential Office of Digital Engagements and Communications. And most importantly, we decode them. We understand that, yes, whilst there's been real reform and progress going on, there's also been pains. But that's the friction that comes with, change, sustainable change. So we see them as data points, we acknowledge them, and we use them to try to build for a better, communications with our people. And most importantly, you should understand that these decisions by Mr. President, including the reforms that he has taken, are rooted deeply. And I repeat, these reforms are rooted very deeply in governance and leadership. So yes, you might say there's discontent, but for us, the way we see it, the data point that we see, there's no disconnection yet.
Official unemployment figures following a new methodology suggest a drop to 4.3%, but labor unions dismiss the figure as fiction. Analysts argue it hides a grimmer reality when underemployment and informal job losses are included. They estimate the true rate may top 30%. And for Nigeria's youth, who make up 70% of the population, jobs remain out of reach. Security remains another pressure point. Government figures say 13,000 terrorists have so far been killed, but killings, kidnappings, and displacements persist. The president's political style has also drawn criticism. In Rivers State, his decision to suspend an elected governor and the appointment of an administrator ignited a constitutional debate about executive overreach. Supporters call it an intervention to restore order in the state. Critics call it a dangerous precedent. And at his party summit this month, Tinubu was endorsed as sole candidate for the 2027 elections. He defended his record.
Through our Renew Hope agenda, our administration pledged to tackle economic instability, improve security nationwide, reduce corruption, reform governance, and lift our people out of poverty. How fast will you have reconstructed this country? If you allow the arbitrage in the exchange rates to continue, that is the grandmother, father of corruption. Yes, we encountered challenges when we assumed office in May 2023. But we have made progress by implementing difficult, long overdue, but necessary economic reform.
President Bola Tinubu says his administration is on track despite the challenges. But for many Nigerians, especially the young and the poor, the real test now isn't how many reforms are launched, but how many lives they lift. From the presidential villa, Adesuwa Omoruan, Arise News.